think the organizers deserve a hand, okay? We had to have one falling ceiling, one exploding so and believe me, I've seen a lot of things in my years in teaching in this field. As Glenn introduced my work, it is indeed in the field of applied psych. I am not a natural. I was born a psychic as a box of rocks. I was born into a family of police officers who, if they thought I was funny, would have ground me or her. In fact, when I began to learn this, my father said to me, "What in the H are you trying to do? We run your type out of town once a year." And I tried to explain to him then that I was not trying to learn to be a gypsy fortune teller. And it took him years to learn that I was indeed not trying to learn that. Then he came to work for me when he retired from the gypsy work. So, I have a few slides. You'll find that they're quite colorful. I will tell you that the backgrounds behind the slides are living crystals. That's why it's so beautiful. Challenge of the future. This is what was available on the newsstands when I began. I began by reading an article in a science magazine about the Russian work in ESP. And I went out to find out what could I get, because as a journalist, we're eternally curious and eternally looking for something new to write about. Well, this is what I found. The Witch's Workbook, whatever. I had to develop a couple tap-ins into the science press, and eventually did get a tap into Soviet work almost at first-hand level. Nothing was being done in this country except Dr. Ryan. Last night, Dr. Tard informed me that he was pretty much at work at that time, but I didn't know about it. In 1968, this book came out, Psychic Discoveries Behind the Iron Curtain. Many of the things in it were covered over, moved, changed. They weren't quite the way they actually had been. It's still an interesting reference book, however. We're talking about something that should be a helpful thing, not something mysterious, not something that involves powers. Do you say you have the power to play the piano? No. Do you say you have the power to play tennis? No. These are abilities in every mind, so how mysterious could they be? Ongoing research projects, you're up to date on that because you certainly heard about them here from the guys that are doing. They call me the psychic mechanic, not because I fix cars, but because I take apart the psychic skills to find out how they work so I can learn them and then I can teach them to somebody else who doesn't know how to use them. You can see up at the top, she's not a born psychic. I've been beating people over the head for the last 36 years and they still say, "Oh, Bevy, she must be a natural." No way. Universities around the world have studied this from the beginning, both sides of the iron curtain, both sides of the water. But it's as natural as breathing. No alternate states of consciousness are available, are useful in learning to do what we do, which is called IRVA, Hard Target Remote Viewing. Changing the popular perception, yes. Different hairstyle. Extension of the natural sense beyond what is called natural. How do we know what's natural? One person can do one thing, another can do so much more. So, what's natural? What's normal? We don't really know. But when we learn to use psychometry, which is hard target remote viewing, you're extending your sense of touch far beyond the ordinary. What you touch gives information to the mind. So it's an extension. You know there are people who make their living tasting coffee, tasting wine, smelling perfume, tasting food that the government, the United States government pays them to do this. They can tell by smelling a closed can whether the food is spoiled. The psychic mind is developed in two ways, okay? reading and listening to tapes and programming the subconscious, which is something that you will find outlined in my second course outside, the advanced course, programming the subconscious. But you do that when you're learning to use ESP. You're programming a skill. And once you have the skill, like Pavlov's dogs, you'll be able to use it when you want it. Every person without exception can learn to do these things. If I could learn, believe me guys, you can. This is one of our basic training exercises. Again, it comes from the USSR. They found that you could tell colors apart by touch. Not only do they have temperature difference, but they also have tactile differences. There are two ways to work with color. One, just purely by touch. Two, by actually pushing against the color. It will have a totally different feeling. You'll notice that people are always using their left hand in these slides, because your left hand is your receptive hand. Any object can be used as an inductor. Now you'll notice the use of the word clairvoyant there. That's all we were allowed at the time. So we had to go with what was available. Those old words are disappearing in the new world of remote viewing. Some of these are self-explanatory. This is how we blind a target. It's in a box, or a bag, or buried under some other substance. If you can learn to use psychometry properly, you can take the box or the bag or whatever, and you can learn to see with your eyes in the mind what is in it. Once you can do that, then the next step is you don't even need to touch it. Even a simple stone, a simple rock. A lot of my students call my classes rock school because we use rocks. We have people bringing us rocks from all over the world to use for training purposes. Everyone has its own story to tell. To be helpful, it must be able to operate when you want it to. This is the problem, and it's also the difference between us and the natural. Naturals can only operate when it happens to them. We force it because it's trained, it's programmed, it's developed. U.S. Side Squad casebook murder was begun in 1971. I'm the first licensed private investigator that holds an actual license and does work. We function as a private detective agency. We don't have a charge. We do all our work pro bono. Through working in a group, we find that each mind supplies different information in some ways. Many of the impressions will be identical, and then some of them will be a little different. So it's sort of like making a patchwork quilt. You need so many pieces to make this quilt. It's also like a puzzle, a picture puzzle. So many pieces go into the puzzle until you can see the picture clearly. So each member, whether he's a police officer who's lending his skill because he's trained in this kind of remote hearing, or whether it's an attorney, or a nurse, or a doctor, or whatever the squad member happens to be by profession, are all trained to retrieve this information. So they put in their little bits and pieces, and I make the quilt. This is a school book which was produced for our 7th grade students all across the United States. It features the work of the United States Side Squad. Very, very much a compliment. This is my first big case, locating a body, holding a powder puff that belonged to the missing victim. I was able to come within 15 yards of the place where the body was, on foot. In other words, we go out and do our own searches if it's in the area. If it's in Colorado or California or someplace else, we don't do that. But if it's local, anywhere within a 250-mile radius, we will actually go out and find it ourselves. So they said, we're going to give you publicity on this, get ready. After that, the cases started coming in like mad. The Side Squad is an official police assistance group. We cannot and do not take cases from the public. I've had to turn away a couple while I was here, and I'm sorry that I had to do that. But we can only work for police with their permission. The questions are known, but it's the answers we need, right? So you pick your mind against this unknown, and the trained mind responds with answers. How do you do this? Basically, we begin by teaching people how to use a hard target, a psychometric target. Then we teach them how to wring all the possible information out of that target. Psychic detectives are trained just like police detectives and reporters. You learn to ask your mind questions about the item you're holding. And those questions are who, what, where, when, why, and how. We have a code word called Iwadi, which is the last letter in each of those words. If you can learn Iwadi, you'll never forget the question sequence. Some targets won't require all of those questions, but most of them will require at least 2, if not 3. So if you can remember what you're asking. Now when we get to the you do it part of this lecture, you're going to receive an object. And you're going to hold it in your left hand unless you are a left-handed person. And you're going to ask yourself, who does this item belong to? What does that person do for a living? What does this person look like? Where does this person live? Any questions you want to ask. But we're going to give you the item to work. This is a workup sheet after a session has been done. Now you'll note that there's a drawing sketch there of a particular intersection and houses. And each one of these separate things over here on the left, that's a different squad number. And then we have, on most cases, we have at least 6, if not 12, squad members working. The squad member that executed the sketch is a police officer himself. This is how we work. No trance, no seance. Sitting in the middle of the police station or wherever, out in the field, in a police car, wide awake, alert. The only thing that they left out of this was that I almost always have a green steno pad and a pencil. This is how a student begins training. What's going on here is life death. Because one of the most important questions in our work is this person is missing. Is this person alive or dead? So you have to learn from a very early stage in the squad to be able to tell whether there's life or not. Secondly, many times we are submitted a case of homicide. This we already know, obviously, the person is not alive. So we have to go with the other questions: who, where, how, when, and why. But this is a good skill to begin with. Using photographs, and I will tell you now, all you have to do is secure a set of envelopes and say 2 or 3 pictures of people who are currently alive, 2 or 3 pictures of people who are currently not alive. Seal them up in envelopes or have somebody else do it for you, make them identical, and learn how to feel for this. There will be a warmth or a tingle if they're alive. There'll be a cold dullness if they are not. Once you have learned this, it becomes part of you, and you can do it from then on. Remind me later, I'll tell you about one case where that was very important. Can I come down just a little? You're all familiar with early photography. Okay, those are my fingerprints when I'm not working on something. These were taken by Bob Beck. Some of you here know who Bob Beck is. Okay, those were my fingers when I wasn't working. That's why I am working. So there's an energy here, isn't it? It is the job of all of these parapsychologists that were here, and myself, and everybody else involved with this, to someday identify what that energy is. Obviously, it's not EMF, a Faraday cage, 600 feet underwater in a submarine. Nothing can stop it. There is no barrier. So it's an energy unlike any other. But what is it? We use pendulums for one thing, location. At last year's conference, I did a workshop on location. Because many times we're called, say, there's a plane down. But they don't know what state it went down in. It could be anywhere from One of them was flying from Roosevelt, Utah to Los Angeles, California, and they had no idea where it had gone down. So when it came to us, we had to locate a state to start. In other words, we can see where it is, but where is that? Is that in California? Is that in Arizona? Is that in Nevada? Is that in Utah? Well, it was finally located 26 miles northeast of a little town in the California desert. In fact, not very far from here. And that is exactly where it was. It was 26 miles north of Baker, California. But the only way we narrowed it down to California was by using a pendulum and a map of those 4 states. That's one of our pendulums. That's a heavyweight. It can be also loaded. It unscrews, and supposing you're looking for water. You put water inside the pendulum and it will locate other water. This is one of our cases that we were very proud of, a serial killer. A lot of times people think people like us are only called in as a last resort when the cops have nowhere else to go. This is not true. Frequently they're called in on the day the thing occurs. We are. In this case, a girl had been leaving her high school play. She lived a block away. She never went home. The next day, the police chief called and he asked whether we would be willing to help with this girl. And of course we were. He sent a detective over with a jacket that she had worn and a photograph, which I requested. And when I took the photograph, I knew immediately we're looking for a dead body. So then it was a matter of finding where the body was. I requested that the chief did not tell the family, because what if I was wrong? What if she wasn't dead? No. We don't deal with families, ever, and that's why. So the next day, the detective came back, and he had a map, which I had requested, which was a utility company map. You ever seen one? It's huge, the scale. We're talking about southern Illinois here. And the scale on that map was just perfect. So I used the pendulum. I came up with a location between 2 small towns, Millstadt and Floraville. And that's exactly where the body was located. Now, this was a serial killer. We knew he was going to kill again. All I could give him at that time was a sketch. He had Elvis Presley sideburns, a really thin face, dark hair, and his name began with a B. That's all I could really get on him. It was a B. He was not a resident of the town where this girl was taken from. So with that, the police chief brought me over to his office and he gave me a map of the area. And he said, okay, where does this guy live? I said, I told you he doesn't live in Delta. But he comes here now and then and he stays here. And he said, well, where does he stay? I said, he stays with relatives in an apartment over a store right in here. And I showed him where that was. He told me after this was over that that was exactly 100% true. He was surprised. I was too, obviously. But I told him that this guy was going to do this again, and he did. About 3 weeks later, he took a girl out of the bank ATM drive-through, and the detective handling that case didn't want to work with us. So the chief had to keep working with us under the table, so to speak. And he said, is it the same guy? And I said, well, sure, it's the same guy. I told you he was going to do this again. But I said, I tell you what, he's going to be caught in the commission of one of these crimes, just like this. And that's how you're going to catch him. So the chief nods wisely and we go on. About 6 weeks later, he took a girl out of the laundromat late at night. And he picked the wrong girl. She worked out. She broke away from him, leaped out of the vehicle, and remembered enough of the vehicle description and the license plate that they picked him up. Now, they couldn't connect him to the 2 other girls, right? But they had him for attempted assault and rape. So they put him in a slammer, and the chief came over and he said, he's got those sideburns. So he started leaning on the guy, and within no time at all, Mr. Sideburns admitted that he indeed was the serial killer. Not only that, we had picked up that he had done this before in another part of the state, and that proved out as well. So the guy was a serial killer, and God knows how many he would have done had he not picked the wrong girl at the laundromat. You notice, by the way, it said psychics search for missing girls. We won't let them use squad. This is the girl as she was found. Now, here's one of the handicaps of being a private eye in this business. A guy we fingered for a homicide had his defense attorney get up and ask for a mistrial on the evidence that he'd been caught by psychics, not cops. The police said, wait a minute, buddy, we've got you. They just told us where to look. So, it was denied. This is one of our squad members just finishing one of our squad report forms. You notice that it has two forms. Pardon me, two separations there. If you get a sketch of what Glenn and the guys would call an ideogram, it goes in that smaller column, and then the rest goes in the broader column. Now you see how much he has there? He has filled up a whole page. Now, for what he got and what from the guy next to him got and what everybody in the group got, we put together a master that contains all of the common hits and then some of those that aren't quite so common. So I have to do that part. Here you see the squad processing. They're doing hard target work. Each one of them is holding an item from a crime scene, and it may not be the same crime, because sometimes we have more than one thing on the file. So they might be working one thing and next to them is somebody working something else. In a perfectly normal situation, you see, there is no problem with Guido. As animals can be trained to perform, so can the mind when it's told what is wanted of it. Our training tells what is wanted of it. Of the levels of brains that we knew when I began this work, the only place we could find to put this was in the superconscious. Subconscious, no. Conscious, no. But there seems to be another aspect where that energy is, that mysterious energy we're talking about, because that's where the information comes from. When you hold an item, the conscious mind decides what the question is. It bucks it to the subconscious, and it comes through to the area where this information resides. And then it takes it right back to the conscious so we can write it down. Never do psychic work, never do any of this remote viewing, any kind, no matter what system you've learned, without a pad and pencil or a tape recorder, so that every single perception can be put down. It can be. Oh, yeah, I'll get it. Okay, recognition. This is the biggest part of what we do, because we're usually reconstructing a crime. So you have to be able to use this to go into the past. In later years, we started working for archaeologists and paleontologists. And we're right in the middle of the dinosaur project with a scientist right now. In fact, I was brought some dinosaurs while here, and if you didn't hear them go up and down the corridor, we do work with lab scientists as and when we can, always have, from the very beginning. Dr. Ryan was extremely helpful in some areas, but he and I could not agree on one thing. He could not believe you could teach ESP. And I said, look, the ability is already there. The teaching sharpens it, grows it, brings it up, makes it useful. He could not accept it. He thought it was either there or it wasn't. He thought there were people who didn't have any at all. This is our first, and you see at the bottom, the dreaded inquiry. But don't worry, this one's really true. This was one of the first experiments we did for a professor in college. He gave us a tooth in a box. Didn't tell us whether it was human or what. In holding that tooth, we reconstructed a whole civilization. Even that the guy was struck in the head when he died. And when we gave this back to Professor Radford, he said that the thing that struck him the most was that when the skull was found, it had a depressed skull fracture on the side we said it should. So it got in the papers. This is another one. Now here, the police find somebody just flung away like a piece of Kleenex in a field. This is somebody's child, somebody's son, somebody's brother. They have no clues, nothing but that. And so they look for a psychic detective. Now there are other people in this field. There really are. But they don't work like we do. They frequently work for families and sometimes even charge. This is something we determined early on, no, it's not for us. I'm not putting them down. I'm just saying we can't work that way. A lot of us are police, and we know darn well they don't have money. But how would you like somebody to say, I want $600 to tell you anything? I just never felt that was right. So maybe we're stupid, who knows? This case was so. This is how a case might come in. A box with a saw or a gun or whatever the murder weapon happened to be. One time I was stopped from getting on an airplane because I had a spent shotgun shell in my purse. And I'd like to know how I would have threatened the pilot with that. A piece of cardboard. This is a squad meeting. Now you can ask, why are they all men? Because almost all my squad are men. We have found that police officers and a lot of men in technical jobs of one kind or another learn this system easier, much easier. The higher the intelligence, the higher the IQ. Now don't look at me like that, girls. I'm not saying you don't have high IQ. But the smarter you are and the more analytical and logical you are, the more likely you are to be able to learn this well. That's what it is. So we end up with a lot of guys in class. What we're working on here, that is an Air Force case. They had a young airman found shot to death in his Volkswagen with this huge shotgun, and somebody said it was a suicide. Well, you get in one of those tiny little Volkswagens with a shotgun this long and see whether you can commit suicide. So it ended up as one of our cases. And our workup on this case exposed a drug transfer ring in the Air Force, which they had not previously known about. Can everybody read that? This was taken off a body, was found floating in a river. We were able to locate the body. And this was the watch. Then the job was to find out why he was a body. Okay, precondition, more fun, the future. People think that time is like here, here, here. It goes on into infinity. No, it's all occurring at once in some unknown way we don't quite understand. It's just as easy to get an impression from the future as it is the past. And we work with this all the time. Precognition is possible because we just don't understand time. If you're going to tie yourself to that railroad track, past, present, future, you're not going to be able to do it. Timing is the most important factor, of course, in precognition. It was one that gave me fits. This was one of the first precognition experiments that came out of the Soviet Union, which was to not see what someone else had drawn in another building a mile away, but what someone else was about to draw. And it's one of the earliest precognition tests. This gentleman gave me a house, because through a remote view of a sealed envelope, I was able to tell him that a crop would fail, although I did not know what the crop was. He gave me an envelope that had a question in it, and the question was something concerned with coffee futures. And seeing the failure of a crop, I didn't know what that meant, but he did. I thought I was getting something really weird. This failing crop was a business question. I never got to read the question, so I looked over at him and he's grinning from ear to ear. Well, he became a multi-millionaire by putting $24,000 into coffee futures on the futures market. He became a multi-millionaire and he gave me a new house. Hey, you can do this too. That's why I'm here to tell you what you can do now. All right? The choir is trying again. There it is. That was the house. That was Creek Road, right out of St. Louis, Missouri. I told them I wanted a house all on one floor because I had polio and I got really bad legs. And we raised our 6 kids in a 2-story house with lots of stuff. So I thought he was kidding, of course. He said he'd buy me a house. I thought he was kidding. But I lived in it for 9 years. ESP candidates should be tested against real things. The stock market is real. Ball games are real. Whatever your interest is, whatever you can latch onto, always test yourself against a real, provable opponent. Something like a ball game, something like Wall Street, whatever. We don't just do the criminal work. Some of us are interested in testing against this kind of thing as well. Am I looking fast enough? These are envelopes. Each one contains the name of the stock. If the stock is going to respond by turning into a blooming rose, it would be nice, but we don't usually get that. What we do is we pick 4 stocks at random, put them in envelopes, and touch them to see if they're warm or not. If they're cold, they're not going up. If they're warm, they are going up. So what question would you ask mentally? Is this stock going up? Well, sure, sooner or later it will. So you're going to have to think about this a little bit. How do you phrase your questions in court? Is this stock going to go up in 30 days? Now that's a more useful question, isn't it? Who cares what AT&T sold for in 1980? But is AT&T going to go up this week, next week, within 3 months? So that's how you begin to work with the market. Yes.
This is my first time to this conference, and I'm kind of nervous saying this, but last night I went to Las Vegas, and I just, like I said, I wanted to try out the theory that I learned here in the last few days. Around 2:30 in the morning, I rode for over 1 hour on the bikes. And
You were out.
And I made somebody over $30,000.
What did you make?
I didn't trust myself. I made over 1,200.
Flunk it. Somebody flunk it.
That I learned from the last few days that I thought this would be amazing. I got to test this. The test yesterday were some people that went out to test the roulette, and I said, well, I'm going to follow this guy, so I just took a $25 chip, and it was red.
Well,
so I said, if I trust it, if I put my whole fortune on this thing.
There are 2 games in a casino which are remote viewers games. One is blackjack, because if you can learn how to do it, you know what the next card is all the time. The second is roulette, and the reason is because you can only make 1 bet, pass, no pass. And you can remote view which one of those is right. That's what he did. Okay, stock market contest, the St. Louis Business Journal. In Dr. Dean Rage's book, The Conscious Universe, he has told the story of how they pitted ESP, me, against 18 stockbrokers over a year's span, which stocks would go up the most. Now, the question then was a year. Will this stock go up in a year? So I selected my group of stocks, they selected their group of stocks. I came in 0.04 behind the leader. All the other 17 didn't make any money at all. So that shows that it can happen. I did not have the courage to ask that one broker which system he was using. This was me in Omni. Again, another hairstyle. Where do we get the names of stocks to use? A little book you can get from your broker, who at the time for me was New Hart Cook, now it's AGF. You just sweep through the book until a name jumps out. Write it down, put an envelope. Do that 4 or 5 times, you've got your base pool. then you can start asking the nitty-gritty, is this stuff going on? Okay, if it's cold, it won't. If it's warm, if it tinkles, if it pulses, it will. Put it aside. A lot of times we'll have something in mind, maybe one that we're kind of interested in already, but since we don't know which one it is, you might end up buying one of the other three because they're hot and it isn't. Most of the psychic skills can be learned in hours. You find it out here. Weeks. The more you use it, the better it works. This is one of the jobs that we did for a scientist, Dr. Joseph Goodman. He was doing an earthquake experiment. He gave us a box of rocks from 4 major fault zones. Yes, they were psychic exotic. And we were to go through them on a regular basis. One night, one of the samples heated up. Now, we didn't know where the fault zone was, so we had to call Dr. Goodman and say, this sample heated up. He said, which one is it? It's number 1 or 8, whichever. And within a short amount of time, like 7 or 8 hours, a quake occurred in that area. Only he knew where that area was, which sample was being identified. So it ended up in the paper again. We seem to acquire press. This is a class. People sitting around a room at lecture with coffee, normal situation. We don't have to go in a room, shut the door, lay down, and go in a trance to learn to use these abilities. This is what was the squad secretary. We have a new secretary right now because we burned him out. He has so many papers to go through in order to help me put that quilt together. We use this to find loss, to solve the crime, to find what this energy is, to answer the questions of missing people that are brought to us, and how that same energy makes the Cook's radiometer work through human psychokinesis. Once we have solved and found out what these energies are, there's no end to what we may be able to do with this. Now that's the advanced slides. That's the end of the slide presentation. I will take some questions, but I'd like to give you a few more specifics first. The purpose of my being here at the remote viewing conference is because we too are remote viewers. We were not trained in the military system. Our training system was older. I began my search in the middle 60s. That's a long time, gang. We learned it every piece of information we could get, whether it was from Dr. Kenham in Holland, whether it was from our Ryan's lab, whatever we could get, got to tap into the foreign work. We learned it well enough to put it into use, to help people to find answers, to find questions, to help with crimes. This was all before I did any of the financial stuff. That was much later. During the 1970s, I was asked to work for a government agency, the same agency that the rest of the guys work for. And I cannot tell you what we did, but we spent 5 years working for that agency. And in 1979, I got out of it because we were overloaded. And we have a little light up here. I want people to see the job that my hairdresser did. Because in this heat, by golly, she did a heck of a job. So, thank you for the hairdresser. She's here. We've done a lot of things with this. We haven't done them for publicity. We don't usually do them for money. The way I make money is that I write. I'm a journalist. I was a journalist when I started this, and I still am. My next book is coming out next month, and it's called The Right Stuff, and the subject is antique fountain pens and inkwells. We were antique dealers for a while. But I don't do readings, we don't charge people, so I have to put it to work someplace. In order to get the bread coming in, you have to do something, so I use my writing skills. We did not bring all of our books here, I've written 24, because they said just bring ones that are related to remote viewing. So we just brought 2 in the 2 courses. Now, would you all like to participate in an experiment? Okay, we have 150 pennies, and they may stretch. This gentleman up here is going to take one and pass, so that each one of you gets a penny. And when you get that penny, we're going to hold it in our left hand. Now, I'll tell you, unless you're left-handed, then you can try your right. Yes? Just hold it in your left until you hear different. Now, I'll tell you something else about penny and money that you don't know. Are you aware that money has taste? Hey, you. Don't talk. One of the first things we learned in our training classes is that you can hold a coin in your left hand and it will transfer a flavor to your mouth. Now, did you ever try this? Okay. I will tell you in advance that if you hold a penny in your left hand, don't talk. A penny has a power equation. If you try this, if you just hold coins in your hand, always the left hand, you'll find that it transfers to right under the tongue. You'll get this just disgusting flavor from a nickel. A quarter will taste different, a silver dime will taste different. People don't realize this, that if you were not able to see, you could tell one coin from another in that way, just by the way it tastes. Now, I don't want you to do that with these pennies. This is a classic squad experiment. A person wore those pennies in their pocket, on their body for a whole week. This strange energy that we are talking about, that we don't fully understand, has transferred itself to the penny. During that week, it has soaked up the personality, the information about this individual. Now, as you hold the penny, what you want to ask yourself is not who is he or who is she, but what about this person? What does this person do? What is this person like? Is this person tall, sharp, whatever? You get as much information out of this as you can. And you can do this while I'm talking, because you have to learn to do this under fire. Otherwise, it's not going to do you any good at all. I am teaching class tomorrow, but as far as I can tell at this time, it is full. We do teach in St. Louis, Missouri at least twice a year. And if you're interested in taking a course, drop by our table and get your name. Or go to our website, which is www.usscisquad.com. Now the question is, when you get your penny, as I said, you can choose your own. But tell me something about this person. What you're doing is asking your mind to remote view the person that wore the penny. Okay? Ask yourself questions about it. Now, has everybody here, or has anyone here, ever felt the energy that we're talking about, this mysterious energy? Okay. Would those who are here like to have a chance to feel this energy very strongly? Just for once? I'm going to ask my squad members, and if you have a penny in the back and somebody next to you does not, share it, please.
I've got one here next to me.
Well, there's one extra here.
Somebody who doesn't have one, come up and get one.
Yeah, somebody that doesn't have one, come get one. I'm sorry, we were not expecting this large crowd here at this conference. Lance, I need you up here. All right, I want you all to hold up, unless you're left hand, I want you to hold your left hand up facing me. Now what we're going to do is we're going to project, this is two of my squad members, Mary's squad secretary, Lance's squad attorney, and we're going to project energy. So you just hold up your left hands. And we're going to project some of this energy that we've been talking about. You don't have to hold them up near your own. What do you feel? Feels like a little deep breath when you're down here. Yeah. Now close your eyes and see if you feel it more intensely. With this many people, we needed 3 centers. Okay, now do this. Hold your own left hand and do like this. And just see if you feel it more strongly than when we were sending. Don't move your hands so fast you can breathe. Slow. Okay? Let's make the hands tingle. Okay, now try that with the person next to you. And then hold up their left, and you do that with your right. After this presentation is over, Officer Simonetti is going to be presenting hers. And we're going to be setting up a PK experiment in the back room that you would come out and look at after her presentation. Now, does everybody find that it's working well with their left hand, either you lefties? It's easy to tell which one is your receptive hand. Yes.
Did you say if you're left-handed, do it with your right?
Try it both ways.
Okay.
Because that's going to be important if you're working a hard target as to which hand to use.
What if they're both the same?
The one that feels it the most intensely is always the one to use during hard target movement, okay? After you learn how to do it that way, you can branch right off and do it the way Lynn does it or the way that you've been taught, no matter who your trainer was. So you have no contact with it other than a number. But we like to start people out with actually being able to touch it, which is why you were given the pen. Okay. Now, during the 5-minute break, you can write down your impressions, and if you want, you can hand them in, because the individual who wore the pennies is here, and would be glad to quickly look at your impressions. Now, the questions that you should ask was, tell me something about this person. How tall is this person? What does this person do? What kind of person is this? Whatever strikes your mind to ask about that person. And I'm very carefully not telling you whether it's male or female, because that's front loading. All right, so I'm going to be kicked off here in just about a minute, I think. Am I? Oh. All right, then I can tell you more. Also, any questions up to here? Not one. I have put you either to sleep or stultify you. Yes. Yes, there is. Yes. She wants to know whether you could pick something up from money or any other object that's been out in public. Not like a disease or something. But have you ever noticed that when you're staying in somebody else's house or in a hotel, a strange bed, you might have strange dreams? It's because that bed has been slept in by 8 million people. And if you're the sensitive, and if you weren't, why are you here? Then you actually can pick that up from lying in the bed trying to sleep.
Try a blood transfusion sometime.
Another one. This energy is real. This energy is something that we live and breathe and exist within. We use it all the time. Telepathy is something that we do. We're broadcasting all the time, our thoughts and feelings. That's why you can walk up to a person and you know instantly you're not going to like them, or you are going to like them. That's why when somebody is on a roll like this gentleman over here, and he's doing 30 passes, people say, he glowed, or she glowed. They didn't feel it, but that is the way it appears to our receptors, the energy parts of our brain.
I felt like I was in the zone, I really was.
You were in the zone, but I bet people said he glowed.
Yeah, they were saying, they love me.
He got out of their life, too.
But the pit bosses were very, they weren't happy though. The big
They never
pit
are.
bosses were not happy.
So as you're learning how to use your mind, as you're learning what to do with it, remember this. Never just turn it loose on a question. Keep the question sequence under tight control. When you take the object, pre-select what you're going to ask. Already know what you're going to ask about this object. Now, if I handed you a gun, you would know it was probably one of our crime cases. You would want to know something about the crime, who committed it, who was killed, or whatever, this kind of thing. That's pre-selected for you. But in your own work, probably you're not going to be doing this kind of work much. So you have to pre-select what you're going to ask. With a stock, is it going to go up in 3 months, or 1 month, or 30 days, or whatever? You select, okay? The tighter control you keep over your mind, the more accurate the answers are going to be. This is why the remote viewing, the way the military does it, has been so successful, because they are under the same tight control, and in some cases even tighter than a hard target remote viewer like us. The very stages that they go through require that this control be applied. If you don't control ESP, the next thing you know, you're going to be flying out the door on a dragon, okay? You cannot control it. If you don't control it, it's going to control you. And a lot of bad things can happen. So, I got about time for 2 questions. Yes, I got another one?
Yes, one. This is a question regarding the industrial aspects of business applications.
Yeah, after Sony said that they could see no application for remote viewing.
My question is that, I'm an electrical engineer for a company that makes several.
Yeah.
And we've had a major accident years before.
He said that he had a major accident where he works for an electronics manufacturer.
It was a company that makes a shuttle motor.
The shuttle.
It is a company that makes a shuttle motor, a rocket motor.
Yeah.
Well, I work for them, and I'm working as an engineer. I work in the safety department. I was wondering, my question is that, again, I feel it can be, but should be a group that would review a certain process to prevent mobile type incidents.
Yes, absolutely. That is one of the most important applications in remote viewing. He wants to know how remote viewing would help in cases of engines that are made for our space shuttles to pick up on possible problems or defects in manufacture or any other thing that the motor manufacturer might be interested in. And I told him that that is one of the major applications of the kind of remote viewing that we do. I don't generally go around talking about this, but Steve Schwartz ran a project called Mobius. And I won't take another question because it's going to take us the rest of the time. He had a project that I didn't even know about, which was a contract somehow with NASA. Before the shuttle first flew, the Columbia first flew, to see whether they were going to encounter any problems with the shuttle program, problems of any kind. Steve sent Alan Vaughn to me with a sealed picture of a shuttle, sealed envelope. I was in Atlanta working on that multiple child case down there. Y'all remember that, those of you who were old enough, where all those black children were being killed? Okay, so I was down there working with the task force, and Alan comes over to me while I'm waiting to get to the police sketch artist, and he hands me this envelope, and I go away. We're working on a murder case here, because I could tell right away it had nothing to do with that. And he just insisted. So finally I sat down, took the envelope, and I saw a shuttle explode. I said, it has a wraparound ring, and it's going to leak, and then it's going to explode. And he said, is it this one in here? And I said, I didn't even know it was in there. No, it's not. It's a later shuttle. Now, if my brains with me that weekend, I would have done a little bit more work on that, maybe got a name, but Joe wasn't even dealt with. But it was indeed a wraparound ring. So yes, there is an application. I want to thank you all for your attention. We need to leave room for the next speaker. I hope you learned a little bit about applied psych. I tried to make this as general as I could. But we'll be happy to answer questions in the back. Any of the squad members or myself. Thank you very much.